Hi, I'm Andy McIsaac, and I'm here today with Kathleen McSweeney, a candidate for re-election to the Shrewsbury Housing Authority, one of 3 elected board members to the Shrewsbury Housing Authority. So, Kathy, welcome.
Thank you.
So you are one of the currently elected representatives, finishing up your first term. For those who don't know, can you explain what the Shrewsbury Housing Authority is, and what does the board do?
We run separately from the town. Our funding comes for our federal properties from HUD and for our state properties from DHCD. So that's something that people don't think. They think we have something to do with housing in town. And I guess we do, but it's the public housing, which is housing for our elderly and young and disabled residents. We have 273 rooms or homes that we provide for our residents. And the role of the Housing Authority is to oversee the properties, to set policy, to manage the budget, to pay the bills, and then the executive director, who's responsible for the day-to-day operations of the facilities, she reports into us. So we manage her contract and things like that. If there was ever a dispute, we would sit on as a hearing panel if there was a dispute, but mostly it's policy and oversight.
Okay, thank you. So for those who don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, what you do for fun, and why are you seeking re-election?
I'll start with why I'm seeking re-election first. Just a little story. I got involved, I've been selling residential real estate for 25 years, so I have heard thousands of stories about housing, and I understand how difficult it is for people with housing insecurities. So about 5.5 years ago, I had a resident who, a client I was working with, she was in her 80s, the kids really wanted her to move, and she was so it took us a couple of years, we put the home on the market, we got it under the agreement, and then true panic set in for her. She didn't know where she was gonna go. She wanted to be near her church, she wanted to be near Panera, she wanted to be near her kids, she looked at a ton of apartments and nothing was right. Nothing was close enough to St. Anne's, everything was, something just didn't jive for her. Fortunately, she was on the waiting list for Shrewsbury Housing Authority, and she got in. And as soon as she got in, she was just the peace of mind she had knowing she had a home. And that's what made me look into the Housing Authority and learn more about it. That was winter of 2018. I pulled my nomination papers in March, having learned more about it, and then I ran and I was elected in May. So that's how I got involved. It was really from my experience as a realtor and working with people in housing that got me started. As far as who I am a third-generation Shrewsbury resident. My husband and I graduated from Shrewsbury High in 1984. I went on to Northeastern University in Boston, lived in a number of cities in New England and then Chicago even. But when it came time to start our family in 1997, my husband and I moved back here. So it's strong roots. My mother's still in town, so it's a place where I've called home for a long time.
Great. And then I know you do crossword puzzles for fun, right?
I do love the New York Times crossword puzzle. It's my favorite. I get up in the morning, I pour my coffee, and then I work on my puzzle, and it's how I start my day. And if I can't get to my Times puzzle, it really sets me off. I don't always finish it, particularly Thursdays, but Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, I do pretty good.
Great. Now, there's been a lot of talk about having real-world experience, needing to be smart with budgets and suppliers when it comes to affordable housing. But really, there's a more important element, and that's really the element of people. And I think you talked a little bit about it, but can you expand on that? The fact that you are really having an impact on people's lives.
I really feel we are in this position, and I think that needs to come first. Every decision, the first thing you need to think about is how will this impact our residents? And then you make the business decision, but it's going to be about the people first. And I was an accounting major in college. I was a business major. I worked in high tech. I've run my own business for 25 years, essentially, being a realtor. I'm self-employed. So, that aspect is truly important, but it's really having the compassion and the one-on-one relationship with some of these people that I feel like have become my friends over the past 5 years.
Well, that's great. Yeah, and I've seen you in action doing that, and having the opportunity to go with you to like Francis Gardens and talk to the people. I think it's fantastic, and I know vibrant community, and I know the work that the board does really makes that happen. There are really a few competitive races here in Shrewsbury this year. Board of Selectmen, the Select Board and the School Committee and Housing Authority. So it really points to the importance of people being involved and staying up to speed on what the local issues are and getting involved in the local municipal elections. Can you talk about your commitment to staying involved, participating in local elections, and where does that motivation come from?
I would have to say it probably started with my parents. I mean, I registered to vote the day after my 18th birthday, which was in 1984. So now everyone can figure out how old I am. So I walked to the town hall, I registered to vote, and I've probably missed an election here or there, but I haven't missed very many of them. Even, I remember when I was at Northeastern, back then if you had an absentee ballot, you had to go to the dean and have him sign it. And I remember walking into the dean's office and he was like, I don't see a lot of these. And I was amazed. Like, it's our right. People fought and died for our ability to be able to do that. I can't imagine not showing up on election day.
That's great. Yeah, and people, local elections matter, right?
They do matter, and that's where it starts too. I think elections matter, and participating matters, and getting involved and knowing what's on. I try to get to as many of the meetings I can if I don't go in person. I watch them on TV. That's become kind of my entertainment. Shows like this.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're lucky we have Media Connection, because people can get access to what's going on, and even if they can't go to the meeting themselves, they can watch it on replay. So that's fantastic. Now, you talked about your third generation Shrewsbury resident. Your roots go back more than a few generations. I know that your grandfather was instrumental in setting up Shrewsbury Little League.
Yeah.
I see your mother, in her safety vest working, I think every weekend, keeping the traffic islands beautiful.
Every day. She was up there every day, unless it rains. And then she says, God's going to water my flowers. I don't have to go.
Exactly.
But if it doesn't rain, she goes.
Yeah, that's right. And she does beautiful work. But besides Housing Authority, which you're involved in, you're a town meeting member, and you're also involved in the Community Preservation Act. Where does this commitment to give back, because obviously it takes time to do these things. Where does that commitment come from?
Well, one of the things you didn't mention is Rotary. And
Rotary
is, their motto is service over self. And I think that's what it comes down to. I think I was acting as a Rotarian far before I was even a Rotarian. I think it's been 2015 that I joined the Rotary. But I think it's just that, everyone's busy. I have a child. She's in college now, but I was a dance mom, so every single weekend I was off dancing. But I still tried to find the time to give back. And I think the most valuable thing is the people I've learned. I have some friends from Rotary that I never would have met if I hadn't been a Rotarian. And I feel the same way with the real estate board. I was president of the 2022 Realtor Association of Central Mass, which is a 2,000 member trade association. But I've made friends, so I think that's it helps my quality of life. So if you can do something to give back to the community and grow and meet people, it goes both ways. I've benefited, I think, as much as the time I've put into different things.
Right. Now, you mentioned that you're a realtor by profession. You've been a realtor for over 25 years. Obviously, you have some real-world experience around issues relating to housing, affordability, and contracts, and really the elements that determine a quality of life within a community. How does this experience help you as a current member of the Shrewsbury Housing Authority?
Well, I think, again, we talked a little bit about just, relating to the residents, and that has to come first. So every single decision is, based on the residents. But, the business background definitely helps because, I was an accounting major. I could read a budget. I know what a profit and loss statement looks like. I've served on the finance committee for our board of realtors, which is, a pretty big budget. So I've done that, the real life stuff. But again, you have to always think, and it was the same with the realtors. You have to think about the members first. How will this financial decision impact our members? And on the Housing Authority, how will this financial decision impact our residents? And it always they have to be centered in every decision that we make.
Yeah, exactly. That's definitely the right perspective to have. Government is a people business, right?
Yes.
So it's we have to keep that that focus. Budgets are important, and fiscal responsibility and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it is a people business, and how your decisions affect people. So. In the business world, in society, in general, there's a lot of focus on diversity, equity, inclusion. In your work, especially with the Central Mass Realty Board and so forth, how have you supported diversity and inclusion?
I want to say it was probably 3 or 4 years ago. I was, on the executive leadership path, but I was not president or even president-elect at the time of the Board of Realtors. But I was in charge of a task force to try to develop a diversity committee at the Realtor Association of Central Mass. So that was my, kind of got that started. And even when I was installed, that was a big part of what I wanted to do, is to bring other people from different walks of life. And we wanted our association to look more like our population. And, the average realtor, if you look, I'm it, a 55-year-old white woman is like the majority of realtors. And we wanted it to look more like our population, Worcester County, rather than, that type of thing. So we started that off at the Realtor Association of Central Mass. Since then, I've also been appointed to serve on the Massachusetts Association of Realtors Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, as well as our National Association of Realtors. So I'm one of 66 people on the National Association of Realtors Diversity Committee. NAR is 1.6 million members. Wow. So to be one of 66 people chosen I was really pleased by that. And people will be like, what do you mean there's 1.6 million realtors? There's really that many of us out there.
Well, housing's important, right?
It is, yep.
Let's talk a little bit about the decision-making process. Obviously, the board has to make decisions, right? You can't do everything you want to do. Mm-hmm. How do you go about making that determination of prioritizing certain things over other things?
I think I've said this a couple times, but it goes back to, how will this impact our residents, and is it the right decision to make? And I'm not always going along with some of my other board members. I do disagree. I've done that as a town meeting member. I've stood up against different things. So I think you have to think about, how will this impact people, whether if it's as a town meeting member, how does this impact our town, as a housing authority, how will this impact our residents? And I really do think it comes down to that. And just it's always you got to think of, why am I doing this? Like, who's this going to impact?
Yeah, exactly. So you're finishing up your first term, right? Mm-hmm. What's one thing that you learned that maybe you didn't know going into that role?
Housing authority is so complicated. It really is, and a 5-year term is a long time, but I feel like you need that, because now I feel like I understand how it operates. But what most people don't even understand what a housing authority does, and I think that's something that there's definitely a steep learning curve in this job, because it's very, very different than what most people think it is.
Yeah, you're definitely right. So that's great. Well, I know there's some candidate forums and things like that. I don't know if you'll have the opportunity to present yourself at those because of schedules and things like that. Not your schedule, but what would you like to say to the residents who are out there making a decision? It is a competitive race, and people are going to have to make a choice. So, what would you like to say?
I would say that I think that what you need to look at with housing authority is, even 5 years ago when I ran, I committed. I was doing it because I cared about the residents, and I think everyone has the right to a safe, affordable, sanitary housing. And housing authority should not be a stepping stone to another position. You have to care about the people. You have to care about getting the job done. And I think sometimes people say, oh, I'll get on this board so then I'm recognized and then I can get on another board. And that is not the way to go about housing. It's not fair to the residents. It really should be about the residents of the Shrewsbury Housing Authority. Yeah. And I feel I'm that person.
Great. One of the things that you're involved in a lot of things, but you're also involved in the Community Preservation Act. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Community Preservation Act, it is something that was instituted by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and many towns have adopted it. Northborough was an early adopter, and there's some matching funds. So here in Shrewsbury, there's a 1% surplus on our tax, and that's what Shrewsbury enacted in November 2021, I believe. And I worked on the ballot committee for that, because I thought it was really important that we were paying into this fund, but we should benefit from it. And community preservation, there's 3 kind of buckets of money by statute. 10% goes into open space and recreation, 10% of the funds goes into historic preservation, and 10% for housing. So that this year worked out to be about $106,000, which is dedicated towards housing. So I worked on the ballot committee because I thought this would be a very important thing, and now I'm serving my 2nd year on the community preservation committee. And I think that's another thing that's key. By statute, someone from the Housing Authority needs to be on that. I've been that person. I think I'm the best person for it, because having worked on the ballot committee, I actually understand how it works. Right. And our goal for this year is to work together with Housing Authority, with town government, as well as the Affordable Trust Committee, in order to be able to put some additional affordable housing, because that would be great if we could build some more units. So that's another thing that we need to take on. We haven't done that in over 10 years. So to be able to add some additional units, and I think that could be achieved using community preservation funds.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I mean, the ability to make Shrewsbury, continue to make Shrewsbury an affordable place to live, right?
Yes.
For everyone, right? And so you want to give people that opportunity. I know the work you've done, really shows your commitment to people, your commitment to making Shrewsbury that high quality of life community for everyone, right? Providing that. So I really appreciate your service, your dedication, the time you've taken away from your other endeavors to allocate, towards the Shrewsbury Housing Authority. I think is incredible. So you're inspirational in that, and I urge my fellow residents to definitely take a look at you as a very strong candidate. You've done the work. You've shown the commitment to the people of Shrewsbury, to the people that that require the services of the Housing Authority, but the community in general. So I thank you for that, and hopefully people will recognize that when it comes time to make their choice at the ballot box.
I hope so. Ballot box is May 2nd, please. As they say in Chicago, where I used to live, vote early, vote often. But I really would appreciate the support. I'd like to continue doing the work that I started doing 5 years ago.
Oh, good. Well, thank you very much, Kathy. It was great talking to you.
Thank you, Andy.